years old, I worked for Muscarelli Construction Company that built that brewery. And my dad worked for the American Bible Society, and I said, get me some job with some company for the summer. And Muscarelli Construction, which was right out of The Sopranos, was building a warehouse for the American Bible Society in Wayne, New Jersey. And so I was hired as one of the college students working for Muscarelli Construction. It was me and about 6 other sons of dead mafioso. And this is what we're going to take care of Frankie here. You know, he's going to be a lawyer for us and we'll be good. So I got to work on the Pabst Blue Ribbon Brewery, and it was this big scaffolding building. And I assisted the superintendent, which largely meant finding how to pay off the cops so the trucks could park on the road, things like that. They had free beer all day long in a barrel that had not been certified to be sold because it didn't make the licensing. So anybody in that job could drink beer all day long, which I did. It was, you know, you walk on these scaffolds and stuff like that. Many stories like that. And I picked up the paycheck, the payroll every Friday, and brought it with just cash in a cardboard box. And the week after I quit, the guy who took my job was robbed at gunpoint with, like, you know, $17,000 worth of cash or something like that. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I think so. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out how to do it. It just was, it was just the truck drivers had beer time in their contract. They would come in, and while their trucks were being loaded, they could drink as much beer as they wanted, and then go out and drive. So this was 1964. Anyhow, that was probably much more fun than my seminar. So welcome here. I'm glad to have you here, and I'm very excited about this seminar because I've been thinking about this for probably about a year. It's the whole way, and my upsetness with the concept of woke, the word woke being under attack. It's no secret. I mean, I can't overstate the attack on the word woke and the concept of woke. We have a Stop Woke Act enacted by the Florida legislature. I'll get back to that later. So I wanted to look into the origin of the concept of woke and then what this means right now as a matter of faith. Woke is basically meant to be an adjective that began as being alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. And it's come to be include a broader awareness of social inequity. And so here's one stream of where it came from. It appears that the Black American folk singer Huddie Ledbetter, or known as Leadbelly, brought the phrase into popular Black culture. He wrote a song in 1938 about the Scottsboro Boys, which is about 9 Black teenager males accused of raping 2 white women. And it's a case that became synonymous with racial injustice and the American legal system in Alabama. And Leadbelly wrote, "I advise everybody, be a little careful when you go along out there. Best stay woke. Keep your eyes open." And he was talking about the necessity of Black Americans to be woke to the risks of being Black in America. There was an African-American United Mine Workers Union official in 1940 who said, "Let me tell you, buddy, waking up is a damn sight harder than going to sleep, so we'll stay woke up longer." It became widely used in the Black Lives Matter movement after 2014 in the shooting of Michael Brown. It meant being politically and socially aware. It is generally by now become generalized in terms of awareness of racism, sexism, white privilege, etc. It was included, the word woke, in the Oxford English Dictionary in 2017. But the worst thing that has happened is that among certain elements of the American establishment, woke has become an insult. The way the anti-woke act as a way of banning books, forbidding the teaching of critical race theory, and anything that could make a white student feel uncomfortable about their past and our past as a racist nation is in itself an open and ongoing insult to Black Americans. This is a special word, and it's being slandered. And what I want to talk about today is that by condemning the word woke, the establishment is not only attacking African American language, it is also disparaging the whole concept of being awake, which I believe is one of the core and essential elements of moral and religious consciousness. Here's a story. After his enlightenment, the Buddha was walking along the road, and a person on the road noticed his radiance and asked, "Are you a celestial being of God?" And the Buddha said, "No." "Are you a magician or a wizard?" And the Buddha said, "No." "Are you a man?" And the Buddha said, "No." And he said, "What are you?" And he said, "I'm awake." A core value. Being awake is an essential element of enlightenment. In Matthew 1:23, when Joseph wakes up from a dream, he realizes that Mary's child will be the awaited one, the one called Jesus. The shepherds awake to angels, the wise ones awake to a glistening star. In Matthew 24, there's that story I love to tell of the wise and foolish bridesmaids who have to keep awake for the day and the hour and be aware and awake for when the times of presence and challenge and enlightenment come. There is a hymn, a Christmas hymn, an Advent hymn in our hymnal 112 that is from the German Bach chorale, Wachet auf, which simply means be awake. The line begins, "Keep awake and always be ready." They go on and on. Jacob wakes from his sleep and says, "Surely the Lord has been in this place after he wrestled with the angel, and I didn't know it." The child wakes at night, Eli, and thinks the old man Samuel is calling him, but in fact it's God. And he says, "Here I am, send me." So, then and now, being awake. I believe the history and challenge at its essence is being awake, being woke or woken up to an injustice that until that moment, we didn't recognize. And it's so incomprehensible to us that we didn't see it, that once we do see it, we can't imagine we missed it. Every era has its blind spots, injustice and evil so strong that once we awaken and our eyes are open, we can't believe how people fail to see such an evil in their time. How did people not see slavery? How did they not see what was going on with Jim Crow and lynchings and segregation? How did we not see the evil of the removal of Native Americans from their land and the wholesale attempt to abolish their culture? How did we not see child labor practiced abusively right into the 20th century? How could we not have allowed women to vote in this country until the 20th century? Or denied them access to education or jobs or sports until the last 20 years? How did no one see or stop the Holocaust that's killed the 6 million Jews. Martin Luther King loved to note, and Bromley mentioned this last week, the Rip Van Winkle story, that the issue was when he slept for 20 years, he woke up, he missed the revolution. George Washington was now president. And Dr. King always entreated us not to sleep through the revolution. From 1960, especially, I'd say, to 1980, I felt like the world, my world, was jolted into being awake, what we had been sleeping to. When I went to college, none of this was going on at this level. Civil rights began, the Summer of Freedom in '64. The Vietnam conflict escalated into a full-fledged war and draft. The status of women called us to radical change. In this period of time, gay rights broke open. The first Earth Day was celebrated in 1970, and this was just a beginning. My point is that our faith calls us to awaken from a shameful, deep sleep of injustice. And this is a pattern of history, not only of our nation or our culture, but our religions that have neglected to wake up to their own evil over and over again. In this issue once, I asked, in the Campus Ministry Cooperative at the University of Florida, I asked each of us consider what was one major blind spot that our denominations over the years slept through. And Otto Spangler, who was the campus minister for the Baptist Student Center, said that the Southern Baptist blind spot was their split with the Baptists north of the Mason-Dixon line over the Southern insistence that holding slaves was not only a right, but a responsibility. That was the commitment at that point. Jack Sarala of University Lutheran Church said that for the Lutheran Church and the whole German church, its acquiescence to Nazism was where it slept. Father John Gillespie of St. Augustine Catholic Church acknowledged that the Catholic Church's historical evil of the Inquisition was what it had so grossly slept through. I said that for me, one of the things that I could think of the United Church of Christ and its parent denomination, the Congregational Church, is the Salem witch trials that were carried out in 1692. A communal system of hysteria broke out in Salem, Massachusetts, in which people began accusing each other of casting spells and thus being witches. And by the time the panic ended, 185 people had been accused, 144 and 45 men. Most of the men were husbands or relatives of the accused women. 52 women and 7 men went to trial. 26 women and 5 men were convicted. 14 women and 5 men were executed, all within 7 months of the original accusation. It's estimated that at least 100,000 people, mostly women, were executed as witches in Russia, Europe, and the British Isles between 1500 and 1690. When I, with a group of people from UCG, traveled to Scotland a few years ago, we learned that when the lake in the city of Edinburgh was drained, hundreds of skeletons of women drowned as witches were found. And I could go on and on. My point is that each generation sleeps through evil until there is finally an awakening. Great evils typically end through 3 factors. First, people of deep moral and religious faith recognize, name, and protest evil. Second, that protest is translated into group political action that addresses the evil with new laws. By the way, one of the things that ended witch trials was jurisprudence, that people were allowed to address their accusers in a reasonable trial. Third, community responds by awakening with new eyes. The new pastor in the Salem Congregational Church made the members change their seats and sit next to those with opposing views until they got to know each other, accept, and finally find renewal with one another. So this, to me, is why the worst thing our government, our traditional churches, our cultural norms could do is to stop woke. It's racist in the way it abuses Black vernacular. It belittles all awakening awareness as the most important thing we should be doing right now. So think for a second. What is that evil beneath the surface that we might be sleeping through right now? And that's what I want to open up to you, to think of what is it right now that when we begin to or radically uncover it, that will say, how did we sleep through this right now? I'd like to go, anybody raise your hand? Just one quick thing, Tony. Yes.
Is that even on?
I'm one of the few people. I'm one of the few people who probably still reads the Gainesville Sun, but today there was a story about the state instituting a tenure review process every 5 years for tenured professors in the university system. And there would be 7 criteria by which they would be judged, and failure to meet the standards could result in termination. And one of those is, what was the teaching about race? We already knew that in the Stop Woke Act, but this institutionalization of the perversion of the concept of being awake, it just floored me. And if anybody was going to react to that, it probably ought to be us.
And also today it was announced that there will be no more letters to the editor printed in the Gainesville Sun. That, and the community responds, what? Okay, there you go. Somebody else who wants to, next person. Come on, I want everybody to say something here.
I don't know if this qualifies, but I think that we are not woke enough about the division in this country and how to heal it, and don't got a clue how to do it. I was thinking if you seat us next to people here with different opinions, there's not that many probably. So that doesn't quite do it, but I don't know. But I think that we have just a horrible, anger-filled culture going on here, and we need to do something about it.
Next, let's take one. Right in the back.
You know, what's frustrating to me is even within my own family, we've had stark divisions to where there are some estranged relationships. There are some relatives that don't speak to each other because I have a close family member who really believes that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have this ring, a pedophilic ring, and this is a well-educated person with a doctorate. I mean, it's unbelievable, the disinformation. And I don't know how to fight that because, you know, the educated people in my family who are politically estranged from me say, well, Trish, you're well educated. How could you believe that? And they really believe their sources of information. I don't know what we do about that.
Thank you, Trish. I'd like also a person who cleans our house fell in our house, and I wanted to help him. I took him to the emergency room for the day, and he had no health insurance. And so we've been paying certain things, trying to work it out. The bill from North Florida Regional Hospital emergency room for one day where there was no injury. He was bruised. He's nothing continued. Any guess? 15?
At least
Higher.
20,000 when you walk in the door.
Higher than 50. Higher. $78,000. Yep. So healthcare and its expenses. I mean, we're continuing negotiating. Of course, they'll take whatever, but it's just, my gosh. So I'm pretty, that's, when we wake up, that's the kind of thing. What else? Anybody else an issue, question? Yes. Nora.
Okay. Trump said when he was running for president the first time that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it would be fine with his supporters. And we know that it would have been okay with him if that mob on January 6th had gotten to Pence. Now, how can we speak to that? There is no immorality that is too extreme.
I'm getting ourselves all riled up here. Yes.
One of my concerns, and I think the central problem, is racism, and that this country has never reconciled with the really deep-seated racism that exists in the structure of every institution in the country. The Stop Woke Act, just like the Don't Say Gay bill, really are about anyone feeling bad, but the privilege and the hierarchy created about race make us think only about white kids feeling uncomfortable. Well, the Black kids can feel uncomfortable too. And one of the things I think we need to talk about is how can we promote the understanding that the laws really shut everyone up or shut no one up. I'm doing my piece by having my constitutional law students keep track of how many times we break the law in the class, and they tally me and we talk about it. But it's a way of bringing to consciousness the reality that the Stop Woke Act is, yes, I love what you said, but it also applies to those not privileged.
Of course, absolutely. Thank you. The issue of privilege. Yeah, I'm going to Mary Cromer.
My greatest concern is that we're trashing our beloved earth and that we're going towards destroying things, and people are just seem to not be able to take the action that needs to be taken to save our earth, our planet.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary.
Yes, I get this deep sense that, and not just in this country, but humanity in general, and people in general, after a period of time have this deep-seated insecurity. And they're very consumed with themselves and need to blame someone else for whatever negative condition they find themselves in. And I think that's contributed greatly to the atmosphere now that we see and what we've seen, and certainly in modern history and whatever as well. And I think in ancient history also, perhaps there are other people who could speak better to that, I believe.
Yeah. Well,
it seems to me that in the course of this Stop Woke kind of activity, it flies in the face of the philosophy and the religious orientation that those who purport to promote this they believe in, because they end up saying, instead of saying, let's afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted, in the normal Christian philosophy, it is more like, let's not make anybody feel bad about the situation. And normally outrage is what calls us to action. So it's like, go back asleep and do nothing because you don't want to break this law, which is.
thank you. I want to go ahead. I'm going to take one more, and then I'm going to do a little, try to get us from going home and sleep for 20 years.
Well, I want to address the same issue. I'm part of a quilting group, a group of stitching ladies, and we have a rule that we don't discuss religion or politics because people will get offended. We all have very different beliefs. And how do I get around that? I mean, we're all aware of each other's church and faith and so on. And yet sometimes I feel like I need to educate them.
Well, I simply want to say, okay, I want to shift because I want to let people get out and go back to church and feel better again. And if you haven't been to this service, it's a beautiful, beautiful service today. Just fantastic. I want to go back to our call is to be awake. That the Buddha says, I'm awake. And I think that's throughout the Bible, a constant wake up and realize those awakenings are possible. And that's who we are. And that's what we will stand for in the midst of this. And by refusing to let go of woke and awakenness, we will continue to find the places we need to awaken to among each other, among causes in our own lives. Every Sunday in worship, there's a sense of awake, and especially in this coming in 2 or 3 weeks Advent season, when we're called to be awake. We awaken to disturbing issues. How did we let this go? How did I miss this? As well, to be awakened to be people who are awake, who find that as our gift, as our grace. And it's that I want us to hold on to remember that story about the Buddha, remember the stories of people throughout our moral and gospel and religious history of the fact that we have awakened and we do see now what we had not seen before, and the world is a better place for it, and we will find those places to awaken to as well. So thank you for coming. What a fun. Go to church and come to the pet blessing.